get into it.
All right, welcome back everybody to another ACG podcast with me, Tia from the Wild Meridian, and
Me, Jen, from Global Citizen Astrology.
today we're going to be looking at the Moon IC line and following up on our long-awaited Moon series. We did the Moon on the Ascendant, but the Moon on the AC is very different. If you want to give a quick synopsis of your interpretation of the Moon IC, Jen.
Well, the moon I see, I would consider probably the quintessential home line, right? Like it's gonna be warm, cozy, emotional, family vibes, like, right? Yeah, I really can't think of any other way to put it other than the quintessential home line, right? It's going to be different, obviously, depending on the condition of the moon in your chart, right? It's going to have a different flavor. But it's very much about the home, very much about nurturing. It can also hold connections to our maternal ancestry or our maternal connections. I see that all the time, right? With the moon I see, there's some sort of a connection. And if not in this life, there's sometimes like a past life connection. Um, yeah, because when you're dealing with the IC, you're really looking at all of those fourth house significations like ancestry, home, the lineage, maternal, paternal. Sometimes it can be either or. Now, one thing also to take into consideration when we're talking about the moon on the IC is that the IC point, when you're using the whole sign house system, can shift from the third to the fourth to the fifth house, right? Which can give different flavors to your moon IC line experience for sure. Mhm.
So that it displaces the needle from, between, because the MC can do the same thing as it's its mirrors.
Mhm.
It's the 10th house, it's above in the
Right.
chart. So it can wiggle from the 11th, 10th, and ninth house, or the third, the fifth, and
Yes.
the third, the fourth, and the fifth.
Well,
And
that makes so much
that's
sense. Yeah,
absolutely,
that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
And it is interesting because you do sometimes see in the charts, and I don't know if you've seen this in the charts of people that are born at very northern latitudes. Sometimes, occasionally, if they're born very far north, like the MC and IC points can actually shift into the 12th and the sixth house. I'm not sure
wow,
if you've ever seen
that's
that.
really
Yeah,
far.
yeah,
Yeah.
really far. Like I'm talking like yeah, I had a client once, the chart was a Norwegian, right? Norway. So yeah.
Yeah, that would
And I
make
was like,
sense. Yeah,
whoa,
you
I had never seen it. Sometimes even I think in the very north of I'm not 100% sure on it, but I think in the very north of like the UK it can happen, which would be Wales. I would say Wales, right? Yeah.
Wales is the southern part, but you can go, yeah, I mean, you've got like Scotland up there.
Scotland and
So,
Wales,
yeah,
yeah.
any of
I
those,
think it's
northern or
Scotland.
southern ones can wiggle it
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
either direction. Since the most of us general population lives like near the equator, equatorial
Right.
regions, so kind of in the belt of the planet, the most habitable at the moment. Who knows how that's going to change? We tend to have it fall around the fourth. That's really the most iconic traditional place for it to fall. The some of it's like kind of the roots of belonging, living or spending time in the moon I see can feel a lot like coming home. The moon has a lot to do with your emotions, and the fourth house is like one of the most private underworld places to go. So if you have your moon down there, that can really have a sense of belonging and home and privacy. Even being born on your moon, I've seen this a lot. One of my best friends was born on his moon, and when he comes back to this southwest of Colorado or of the United States, he just loves it. But this line connects deeply to your emotional core, your family roots, your inner world. It's where you crave comfort, safety, nurturing surroundings. The energy can heighten intuition and sensitivity, but it often stirs nostalgia. This influence is like really strong pull for nesting, caring for loved ones, and like Jen says, reconnecting with your ancestry.
Yes.
One of the reasons why we took so long to get to the moon IC is it's been very difficult for us to find well-known subjects who have moved, relocated, or were born with the moon IC. It's not, it's a very specific
Yeah.
line.
Yes. If anybody has any really good examples too that they want to share in the comments, that would be great.
Yes.
Uh, okay, June 9th, 1963, 8:44 a.m., Owensboro, Kentucky. Just put Johnny. Just, I like, really, we were looking for a good moon IC example that indicated somebody who made a home abroad, right? That's what I was trying to find. Like,
Yes.
because you can study, I found so many examples of people that were, they were born on their moon IC line, of course. But then it doesn't really, and the moon IC line was significant for them, but then it doesn't really take into consideration like how you can activate that by moving or shifting or changing, right? They were all
Yeah,
really good
because once it's your
examples,
natal
but it's like
chart,
if you're born there,
yeah,
yeah.
you're not going to
So
activate anything that wasn't already instilled in you from the get-go. And so
yeah,
there is no timing technique with that or a
right,
trigger per se. And Jen and I are very
right.
interested in how a location triggers over time and what those signify and how they can be interpreted.
Jupiter in the night. So first of all, I want to talk about how funny this is, right? Because he has a day chart, and I've heard that he's been talked about before in this regard. As far as like his malefic being in the second house and having a day chart, right? Which you would think like that doesn't make sense because like he's wealthy, right? But then if you hear these stories about how like he's like wasted and asking for people to like ship like specific bottles of wine in airplanes like over the ocean or whatever to deliver to him. So like really like what's the word, egregious, grandiose like spending of money. I mean, which can sometimes happen when you get he listen, he was a poor boy from Kentucky. That happens, right? Like
Look at
what do
this
you
Uranus and
you
Pluto that with
you
Mars, like he's really gonna shock, awe, and
spending,
transform.
yeah,
Yeah,
with this
like
and like it money problems as far as like, and I'm sure with the marriage and the divorce and all of the craziness and all the crazy things
yeah.
that probably was not good financially
Hmm.
also for him. And so it is interesting when you think about those things as far as like that's why sometimes when you see like something in your chart where it's like, oh no, my malefic's in my second house of money, does that mean I'm doomed? And then you see examples like this and you're like,
Well,
this is
probably, yeah.
it's what's the word, like it does that mean I'm financially doomed? No, it doesn't. Like it's there's nuances to this,
Hmm.
right? Like clearly he's got a problem with his money even though he's still wealthy, right? And then you look, okay, the ruler is Mercury conjunct Venus, of
Just
course,
gonna
so
say
then
that.
it's like
Yeah.
it's also in the lens of maybe like the finer things in life, right? Spending
Right,
too
because
much
it's
on the finer things
Taurus.
in
Taurus
life.
is ruled by
Yeah.
Venus. Venus is sitting
Hmm.
conjunct. It's all
Oh
in the
yeah. We're
house
getting
of
a little
visibility. Like,
totally,
yeah,
totally. We're
that
a
sex
little off topic,
appeal.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but also not really, right? And then that sun in the 11th, of course, the audience, right? Like that standalone sun there in the seventh.
Hmm.
It is interesting he's got a yod pointing to that Jupiter in the ninth house, which
Hmm.
that alone indicates like something meant to be for him overseas and abroad, right? That
Yeah.
alone speaks to that.
Well, and look at that. It's
And
in Mars, and Mars is ruled, or Aries. It's in Aries, and
mhm.
Aries is ruled by Mars down in the second house.
Yeah, that difficult,
Hmm.
that malefic, that like over spending. I mean, just extravagant, probably just an extravagant lifestyle. I've heard a lot of stories about him. I can't
Well,
think of the details of them off the top of my head, but just like wild shit that he would do with money that yeah.
so let's get into it because his
Yes.
moon, I see, ends up being in France. And he had a long and deep connection with France, both personally and artistically.
Yes.
But he moved there in the late 1990s after meeting the French actress Vanessa Paradis, who he had two children with, Lily Rose and Jack. The couple lived mostly in a quiet village where he bought a 19th century hamlet, a hamlet, like the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's like a town. Like you
Where
want to
was the
talk,
area again?
it's Saint-Tropez. Um,
Okay.
so he's often said that living in
Close to
France
the
has
coast,
allowed him to
right?
escape Hollywood chaos and live a more grounded, creative life.
Mm-hmm.
A hamlet. Like when you look at the pictures online, it's an entire village. Um,
Wow. Yeah, his relocated chart pretty much stays the same for all of France. Also, just to be
yeah, like it
on
could
point
be
with
anywhere.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the moon on the IC, not only the moon on the IC, but the moon, his moon is conjunct the south node. So for in my personal work, the south node, we're talking about like ancestral and past life connections, which let's be real, I'm sure he has. If I'm not mistaken, he's got Native American ancestry, which almost guarantees that he probably has French ancestry as well, right? Especially
Yep.
being from Kentucky area.
Hmm.
There's that mix in him for sure
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
see.
they
So
came up through
that is
Louisiana. Yeah.
yeah, possibly from his maternal and also because of the moon, right? Being on that
Hmm.
IC
Hmm.
or the moon. Yeah, so that's one of the ways too that you can look at that through that lens, but then also his wife and his family being there. Like he raises to his children are essentially French, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, very, very interesting. Um, and then that sun in the ninth house here in the relocated chart. The relocated chart is like super on point about it too, with everything too. Sun in the
Yeah.
ninth, like, the sun getting its joy in the ninth house. It's interesting that Venus, Mercury conjunction here is in that eighth house of shared resources, right?
Hmm.
And his wife, his love, that like the things that come after marriage, the eighth house, the joint
Yep.
assets, all of those
Inheritance.
things
I
that
mean, and that's the thing.
owned
They
with
did end up separating.
or
He's
his
been trying
ex-wife
to
or
sell
whichever.
it for,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, over 10 years. Didn't work out. He's decided to keep it. Nobody was going to buy it. So, I mean, like he owns this hamlet, and that is that, even though they're
Wow,
divorced.
interesting. Yeah. So not only as far as like having a home there, creating a family there, he also actually bought a literal home there, like literal town, right?
Yeah.
Village,
Not just a
essentially.
house, a
Just
hamlet.
a fucking village. Speaking of also that the second house stuff, the crazy ways of spending your money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then relocated
Like,
Neptune's there. It's like so dreamy.
oh yeah, that's really, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, totally dreamy. Yeah, I have I have a couple examples of that when we get to the Neptune I see too. Jupiter's on his descendant here as well, right? So relationships with people, you know, faring well, interesting. Yeah, so his ascendant ruler is that Venus,
Hmm.
which is in that eighth house conjunct Mercury, which is all about those ownerships, the property ownerships, right? Your
Yep.
investments, resources, right? Um, yeah, interesting. The moon on the IC, I feel like you can't like, I mean, it's like you can't make this stuff up, right? When it comes to when it's that on the nose. And also taking into consideration, it's a Capricorn moon. So it's like being the father. And this is the place where he became a father and
Hmm.
raised children. I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know the details. Like, I don't know that much about the personal life. I just know that he did have a French wife and has kids from her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then you mentioned the whole village thing when I brought up this example
Yeah.
idea. I
It
was like,
is a main house, several
yeah.
guest cottages, a chapel converted into a guest house, a bar and restaurant building used as a dining space, a workshop
Uh-huh.
garage, buildings, staff houses, recreational amenities like pools, skate parks, gyms, etc.
Wow. Oh, jeez. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
he, yeah, he spent over like 10 million renovating it.
Once again,
And they
there's
lived
that
there
second
for around
house,
like,
the second house, Uranus, Mars, Pluto conjunction. Like,
yeah.
that's like a
For,
lot
and
of
he's
money
it
to.
was 14 years, but and they were there together. He
Uh-huh.
listed in 2015, he did list it for sale for 26 million. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then uh relisted it at 55.5 million. Like nobody's
Jeez, they're
buying.
not buying.
Nobody's buying, and
No,
he's
hell
been raising
no.
the
No
price.
way. No way.
Um,
The only one that's buying is him. Like the only
yeah,
one that's gonna
nobody's
spend
gonna
the money.
buy this. Like he hasn't touched it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's the last word I got was that it like he just took it off the market and he was just like, I'm just gonna
Mhm.
keep it. But yeah, it's
Mhm. He
I mean
just
you can just
decided to keep it. Yeah.
you can see the whole thing in his chart, right? Like
It's so
extravagant,
funny.
bougie,
I
fills a
know.
home, spent a lot of money there, couldn't sell it. So then,
Yeah.
maybe somebody looked at it and was like, maybe I'm interested. And then he upped the price. Like, I don't really want to get rid of it. So, yeah.
Right. Probably because he did. You do that when you deep down don't want to get rid of it. I feel like you do those kinds of things. You think you
Hmm.
want to sell something, you think you want to do something, and then, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
That's a
But,
really good example. That's,
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was the other moon IC example. And once again, keeping in mind, right, that the IC can shift from the third to the fourth to the fifth in your relocated chart. So always take into consideration when you're looking at the relocated chart, where for him it falls in the IC in his on his moon IC line in that area of France, it falls in the fourth house, which is pretty obvious, literal, that makes sense, right? Now, it could like falling in the fifth house, right? Let me see, because the fifth house is going to indicate your children, right? So when you're thinking and looking about relocating, or when you're thinking and looking into relocating and you're looking at the moon IC line, you definitely want to check out in the area which house it falls, that IC falls in. Is it the
Yeah.
third? Is it the fourth? Is it the
Right.
fifth? Right? Because that's going to flavor your experience differently.
Because
Like,
fifth
are
could
you
also be like a
more,
really good time. That's like the
yes,
good time
good
house.
time,
Like you, that could indicate like
hobbies,
indulgence, especially
arts
if Neptune is
too?
there. Yeah.
Right. Or like getting into the arts, like creative
Mm-hmm.
passions are
Yeah.
good if the IC, like creative passions from your home, like painting
Yeah.
from home or whatever. And then the fourth house is going to indicate more property, right? More
Mm-hmm.
actual property and
Mm-hmm. The ground
actual
beneath
like
your feet.
family ancestry stuff. And then the third house is going to be more about your local community.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good place to relocate if you are interested in community in a place where
And
that
like
IC point is.
communications. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Some place that's walkable, right? When the
Mm-hmm.
IC is in the
Oh
third
yeah.
house, yeah, a walkable location. Places where you know your neighbors, places where you might have sibling connections, right? So these are all things to take
Yeah.
into
Extended
consideration when
family,
you,
that sort of thing.
right,
Yeah.
right, when
Yeah.
you are looking at your moon IC line and your relocated chart. Like, is your IC in the third, the fourth, or the fifth?
That's right.
It's gonna give you.
Charles Lindbergh, and I'm going to just read you a quick little synopsis of Charles Lindbergh because this is an older story, so some people may not know who he is. Charles Lindbergh was an American aviator. He was an inventor and author. He was best known for his first solo non-stop flight across the Atlantic on May 20th to the 21st, 1927. He was 25 years old. He flew in a plane named the Spirit of St. Louis from New York to Paris over 3,600 miles. It took him 33.5 hours, and he instantly became an international hero and a symbol of modern aviation. But here's where it gets a little heartbreaking because his fame um, extended to a very public tragedy. I remember growing up hearing about this from my grandparents. But in 1932, his 20-month-old son, Charles Jr., was kidnapped and murdered. And the crime at the time
Oh,
shocked the world and led
oh
to
my
one of the
gosh.
most famous criminal cases in the US. And so when you hear stories or phrases, the Lindbergh baby, this is what they're referring to.
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
the
was
story.
really
Uh-huh.
big news, and particularly because my in-laws were in the aviation field. I've heard a lot about when this happened. It was just horrendous. But
Hmm.
later in life, Lindbergh became controversial for his outspoken opposition to America entering World War II, and his comments seemed to sympathize with Nazi Germany.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
but
I think
that's
that would be
kind
the
of,
last name, probably.
yeah. But what struck me about him and why it brought it up is because I lived in Maui for over a decade, and he is buried
Mhm.
there. There is this
Really?
beautiful spot, this church
Uh-huh.
on the backside of Haleakala, Kipahulu, and he is buried there. And everybody on island knows that Charles Lindbergh is there. So in his later years, he withdrew from the public life and he found peace in Hawaii. He and his wife, Anne Morrow Lindbergh, moved to Maui in the late 1960s, and they lived there very
Hmm.
quietly on the Hana coastline, which is near Kipahulu. Um, and then he got sick with cancer. And when that happened, he chose to spend his final days there, surrounded by the land that he loved. He was buried at the Pala Pala Ho'omau Church Cemetery in Kipahulu. It's still there. On his gravestone, it says, "If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea." In his later life, he did a lot of conservation work, supported local
Mhm.
conservations there through the Nature Conservancy, humpback whale populations, land. He was really trying to maintain a balance between human progress and the natural
Mhm.
world. And so those later years, um, I think if you look at his chart, you can see, we can zoom in.
Oh my gosh, what a great example. I didn't
Um,
know any of that. That's so, yeah, really cool.
let's see, zoom in here. And you can see just right over here, Moon
Hmm.
IC is just north of Nihao, and Maui is right here. And if we
Hmm.
look at the relocated chart um, of Hana, Hawaii, um, can you see the chart now?
Um, Perfect. What a great example. And he's right there. It's like right, looks like he's on the third house side of it there, right? So
Yeah,
that's like
because
a
it's
uh-huh.
but it's so close to the IC, you're still within orb of 5 degrees.
Oh yeah, it's still for sure like he's on the IC line. But it is interesting to take into consideration like it could have a tint more of like a third house flavor, right? Which for me, islands are very third housey, right? They're very like local community style, like everybody knows everybody kind of vibe.
Totally,
You
yeah.
walk her, yeah, it's yeah,
And that
very
moon
communal.
Sag, um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh yeah, considering also the fact that the moon is in Sagittarius, like this is a very foreign place for him for sure. I mean, Hawaii at this point, they were not a US state, correct?
Yeah,
It
when it was like 19, let me check.
19 or it may have been okay, actually, yeah, because he was born in 1902.
He
So
was
at
born in
that point that he
1902,
moved there,
so
it may
yeah.
have been, it may have been
Yeah,
close. Hmm.
1956.
Hmm.
So it
It's
had
like right
just
around that
become a
time.
state when he
Hmm.
moved
But
out there. Yeah.
let's be real, Hawaii is still like it's Polynesia, right?
Yeah. No,
Polynesia.
it's
It's
definitely more of
US, but yeah.
a territory.
Hmm.
And I have, it's funny because the other two personal stories I have involve Hawaii. So, like
Hmm.
my my daughter's Moon I see is Hawaii, and a very good
Hmm.
friend of mine is Moon I see in Hawaii.
Actually, yeah, my moon I see is in Hawaii too, right? And my parents actually met there. And my mom has a very strong affinity for Hawaii. She was there for many years as a teacher, loves it, right? Moon I see mother. She's moving back. My brother's living there now.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
also, it doesn't necessarily have to be with that moon I see. It doesn't have to be like a direct ancestral connection, but there can be like a maternal connection, right?
Hmm.
But just the fact alone that that's where my parents met is funny. Of course,
Yeah.
the marriage didn't last, but like that's where I was essentially conceived, right? That's where I was thought of. And so it is it's a thing with that moon IC line. Interesting. I'm noticing too, you said he did a lot of conservation like whale stuff, and he's got this yod that points to Neptune, right?
Oh. Ah,
I can't see what's being made. You've got all kinds of points there,
I
so I
know.
can't see what's making
I
it.
can
I
take
know
some
I'm
of
so
these
obsessed
off.
with
Um,
so obsessed with finding like yods there. I'm like yods and charts in case you haven't noticed. I'm
Let
like,
me
oh,
take some of these puppies out so
hmm,
we can clearly see. Okay,
yeah. It
there we go. A little easier.
Okay. It's between that black moon Lilith and
Hmm.
Jupiter, and it's pointing to that Neptune. That's kind of beautiful in a way. Really like Neptune in the ninth. Not to get too off topic there of talking about the moon I see, but yeah, really good example.
Here are the things
Um,
when you go into these charts, people have fully lived their entire life, and charts often give themselves away in their interpretations as you age and you live your natal promise. So it's hard for Jen and I to like look at a chart and not start delineating it and going, "Oh,
totally.
that's where that was." And because this is his
Yeah.
chart after he moved. This is the relocated
Uh-huh.
chart, and that can really influence how you behave in that location, what comes up for
Hmm.
you. Um, that ninth house, Yod, Neptune, Black Moon, Lilith, the things that come to the surface that often get suppressed. I mean, even that moon in the third house of communication around local community speaks to wanting to protect it.
Hmm.
And Jupiter in the fourth, Capricorn, owning property there, being buried there literally,
Right. That's
expands
another
upon.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. The actual burial is very like straightforward with that Jupiter Saturn in the fourth. It's like, and the fourth house, like that, one of the reasons the fourth house has such a significant connection to our ancestry is because it literally, when the sun is passing through the fourth house, it is at the lowest point in the sky, essentially, like it's underneath, right? Beneath our feet. So the signification of the ancestral correlation literally comes from like where do our ancestors typically go? We typically bury them, right? And so being buried is like such an icy fourth house thing.
And look at
Like,
that
yeah.
Saturn. Ain't going nowhere.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Right, right. And the interesting thing too about even Saturn is like time and length and like the older age as you get older and that Jupiter Saturn conjunction and then Jupiter with its flavor of like giving and joyful like I guess just sort of the what I'm trying to say here is essentially how people are like still visiting that grave, right?
Oh
People are
yeah.
still
Yeah.
enjoying like it's a so there's like that Jupiter like generosity of his like of like
It's
the
a
place and the space
gorgeous
that he
spot.
yeah.
Let me
Oh,
see if
I'd love
I
to
can
go.
pull
Uh-huh.
I love going out there. I feel like it may have been purchased, but
Hmm. Oh, that
the
Venus Mercury conjunction in Pisces speaks so much too of his ocean like conservation efforts and stuff.
yes,
I didn't
exactly.
even know. Yeah, really good example. All right.
Okay. I thought so, particularly because he just it's what happens like um
Hmm.
I think a lot of I just because it's been my experience, but Hawaii has this reputation of either like accepting you or like spitting
Hmm.
you out. And
Right,
I've
right.
seen people
For sure. I've
actually,
heard that from my brother. Yeah.
yeah, they and
Uh-huh.
violently too. I've seen people leave
Yeah.
in almost body casts, and
Hmm.
it's not, you know, you just wonder like, ooh, did the Mars fall in his like first house or fifth house there?
Hmm.
There's still a lot of racism against the colonization of their
Hmm.
islands. So if you don't
Yeah, for
look
sure.
local, and so to have gone there and to have fought for the things that are important to the land and the people there, and then to have been a notable individual who essentially spent his later years there, and passing,
Hmm.
and then he's one of the most famous graves. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then
fascinating.
you have
Hmm.
your moon I see there, and like I know
Totally.
some
Yeah.
people. It's just like, what is it about Hawaii?
Huh.
And
Can you believe I've never been? My brother is living there right now. My mom, I've never been, even though the idea of me was essentially conceived there. I've actually never been there, right? And my mom has, I'll go eventually, right? But
yeah,
someday that moon I see story will be unlocked. My moon is in Scorpio, so it's a little bit more of a difficult story tied in with it, right? That Scorpio moon is in fall. So that
mm,
can flavor those lines a little way
deep,
if
deep.
they're
Yeah,
yeah very,
yeah.
very deep. But yeah, you can have a very strong connection, I think, with the especially when it's any IC line, there can be a connection to the actual earth, right? And the land. And I have always been super fascinated with ocean, like wildlife and animals and stuff, as we've talked about with your history
Yeah.
and your
Oh,
background as a
yeah.
marine biologist, like, yeah, super into it.
Hmm.
But yeah, where's your moon IC line?
It's Australia. Okay, so this
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense. This is an interesting story because I did my master's degree in Sydney, Australia,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
let me show you.
Yeah, let me pull it up so I can see Jupiter ascendant and then the
Okay,
moon.
so here's the moon I see line right running through the middle of
Hmm.
Australia, and Sydney right here ends
Hmm.
up being like my Jupiter ascendant line. So it's Gemini. So I have a Gemini first house.
Hmm.
Um, and I went for study. So it's a very like mental
Hmm.
first house. And then the moon I see is
Yeah,
very
makes
close to
sense.
that.
Because Mercury is gonna follow your moon everywhere since they're pretty
Hmm.
closely conjunct. So that is interesting too, then to think about that flavor of your moon IC experience being making a home somewhere you were studying. It just
And
makes sense.
but yeah, so that's my moon. I see. I honestly, for me and my daughter, this is Sydney is like this really sweet spot on the planet. And if Australia
Hmm.
was just a little easier to get into,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
that's the thing with it. Mhm.
yeah, their policies, it's really difficult. But I tell everybody, Amelia Earhart was born in 1897 and went missing, never to be found again in 1937. She was born in July 24th in Atchison, Kansas, and she disappeared July 2nd over the Central Pacific Ocean, declared legally dead in 1939. So Amelia Earhart grew up in a time when women were expected to stay grounded, but she just
Yeah,
couldn't.
that's
She
great.
was climbing trees. She was shooting rats with rifles, collecting newspaper clippings on female trailblazers. Like this was a girl that was not going to stay put. Now she served as a nurse's aide during World War I, but she
I
developed
remember
interest,
that about her.
yeah, in
Uh-huh.
medicine and mechanic. I want to bring up the fact because my father-in-law did this whole thing on this group of women in World War I that were used for
Hmm.
pioneering um, flight aircrafts. They didn't want to put their men on these flights in case something went wrong, so they allowed women to
Uh,
be test pilots,
wow. Oh,
and
that's
she was
so
one of
messed
the
up.
test pilots. Yeah. So in
Oh my
1921,
gosh.
Amelia began flying lessons with the pioneering
Uh-huh.
female pilot Anita Netta Snook. Within six
Uh-huh.
months, she bought her first plane. In 22, her first flight record of 14,000 feet, the highest altitude yet achieved by a woman pilot. In 28, she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic as a passenger.
Hmm.
Disqualified her role, she soon piloted her own transatlantic flight in 1932. Now,
Wow. First of all that air going on, I think is interesting, especially with that being conjunct the moon,
yes,
just for that alone, like being like so intensely like in the air. It's like really kind of literal. It's
yeah,
always funny when that happens, like when the astrology is just literal. Um, Air, yeah. Wow, yeah, second house. Interesting, right? Okay, she's got the IC and Cancer in the third. Okay, and remember a time like this, 11:30 p.m. rounded off, we might be working with something else, right? Um, because yeah, but then astrocartography is an interesting way to then look to kind of like you can actually use it. And it would be cool to do something entirely on this at a certain point, how you can use it for rectification a little
yeah,
bit if you know what places have, just to get, especially when someone's rising sign is unsure, right? When you're
yeah.
unsure of the rising sign.
I want to,
Um,
when you see what
mhm.
the South Pacific holds for her, you're going to maybe agree with the time.
Yeah. So she's got the sun conjunct the south node in the fourth house, which I think is pretty interesting considering what we just talked about, the fourth house kind of being that like burial house.
Yep.
And yeah, okay, hold on, let me hide these. And then let me see. Ooh. Okay, so am I going out on a whim to be
Yes.
like, did her partner have something to do with it? Because Venus is conjunct Pluto, conjunct the moon. Wasn't there a man somehow involved in this? I feel like I remember something with that. Mars conjunct Jupiter in the fifth house. That's a little interesting, that Mars Jupiter conjunction too. Um, 10 10. My goodness. If anything, just shows that she was very detailed. Let me go ahead and pull this up really quick. Okay, so Saturn Uranus conjunction, right? Over the Pacific. And she has a night chart, right? Meaning that Saturn is quote unquote her malefic, right? That's going to be
Hmm.
her most difficult planet. That is interesting, right? Where in the Pacific was she said to disappear again?
Back to the fact that there was a man
Mhm.
involved. Okay, so yes, indeed, a man
Uh-huh.
was involved.
Okay.
His
Yeah. When you
name
got
was
mhm.
Fred Noonan. And he was Amelia Earhart's navigator on her final flight, the one that
Hmm.
vanished over the Pacific. Um, so she and Fred set out on the flight around the world.
Hmm.
They covered from California to South America, across Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. When they reached Lee, New Guinea
Hmm.
on June 29th, lay to Howland Island. It's a
Hmm.
speck of coral islands that are 2 miles long. One of the most dangerous stretches is about 2,500 miles of open ocean,
Right.
and they're
Right.
invisible against the vast Pacific. So her plane, the Lockheed Electra 10E, was equipped with a radio and navigational gear, but communication was
Hmm.
often erratic. Fed Noonan was an experienced navigator. He had guided Pan Am flying across the Pacific, yet minimal radio contact and no visual landmarks. As of June
Hmm.
2nd, on 1937, they took off from Lee at 10 a.m. And 20 hours later at dawn, near Howland Island, the U.S. Coast Guard ship Itasca heard Amelia's voice saying, "We must be on, but you cannot see. You gas is running low. We are on the line
Yeah.
157-337." And then the radio went silent. They
Uh-huh.
never heard or saw from them again.
They never
Um,
found her.
they never found
Honest.
it. Nope,
Yeah, and it
nothing.
is interesting, right? I have chills. That's really crazy. Like Saturn Uranus conjunction there over that area of the Pacific, right? And now, granted, give or take, if her birth time is around close to that time, like it could that those lines could shift a little bit, right? Because
Right,
11:30, when they're rounded so clean like that, those birth times, I can be a little skeptical, right? If
right.
we moved her birth time over to, let's say, to like 11:10
Hmm.
p.m., those lines might shift a little bit, right, in the ocean.
Yeah.
So, but granted, right, the Saturn Uranus conjunction, these lines are not going to uh
Shift too much, given that they're kind of,
they're gonna
yeah,
stay in the Pacific
yeah,
Ocean,
yeah,
right? They're like no matter even if she was born an hour on each side of that time,
yeah.
more than likely, like they're gonna stay. Now where was like, okay, so how does the moon come into play in this? Because it's in the ocean too, here.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
found her moon
the moon
IC
on the
line to be
icy.
within the Pacific Ocean, and I thought when you talk about like being the fourth house being literally your like deepest, darkest in the ground, your foothold, it's not always an indication of death or disappearance, but in this
Mhm.
case, I felt like it was so
Right.
widely known. And then for you to actually bring in the fact that there was a man involved, there was.
Yeah.
Not saying foul play, you guys. It just can be a
Mhm.
signification of
Right.
a specific energy involved. And sure enough, he disappeared with her. Um, I thought it was really interesting. We can view the moon I see in these very romantic ideals regarding home
Mhm.
and family life, but it's like the infinity of placements within the wheel of astrology is also
Oh
indicative
yeah.
of the infinity possibilities
Oh
of its
yeah.
interpretation
Well,
in real life.
okay, yeah. So a couple of things with that. The moon is conjunct Pluto in her chart, right? Doesn't mean that if anyone has that story, it's going to be like that for them, obviously. But the other thing is the fourth house itself, it does rule the end of things, right? The fourth house is essentially it's a pretty dark house, actually. If you take into consideration it's enshrined with the 12th and the 8th, right? So the fourth house actually does have a lot of like more 12th and 8th housey, like signification type, like significant themes, right? That people don't usually think about, right? The end of things. It does actually, yeah, the end of things, the ground beneath our feet. You think of like bones, you think of the literal physical earth, the physical things, like in that sense. And the second house can also hold a lot of that as well, right? The second is very much about the material, the actual material stuff. And it is interesting that that she has that second house like stacked up like that in her natal chart. But yeah, the ruler is that Mercury in the fourth. A lot of interesting things here I didn't know. Also, because that Venus is conjunct Neptune, which is conjunct Pluto, which is conjunct the moon, that whole stellium there in Gemini, the air signs being the air, and then Neptune being water, Venus being that love. Was she was like in a relationship with this guy?
Well, there's no
Or
evidence of that
right,
in regards to it being like romantic.
right.
So he wasn't considered like a lover or adversary. He was more of like a professional mariner and navigator. Um,
Mhm.
so the rumors of romance between the two were never substantiated, but by
Right. Okay.
most accounts, their relationship was like goal driven. Amelia at
Got
the
it.
time was married to a man by the name of George
Ah, she was
Putnam.
married.
Yeah,
Okay.
and her publisher and manager. So like her,
But that
uh,
Venus Pluto, when you
yeah,
have
you
that
know,
Venus Pluto conjunction,
with somebody, yeah, she was out there.
squares,
Um,
oppositions,
yep.
conjunctions, Venus Pluto, they can tend to indicate some difficulties surrounding relationships, especially power struggles. And when you see them in women's charts, sometimes they do indicate foul play in relationships, although not always. But they can indicate foul play from men, from violence, really.
Yeah.
I hate to say it like that, but if
Your
if you know,
spidey
you
sense kind
know,
of went
if
up
you've
on
got
that
it,
one,
you,
didn't it?
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Venus Pluto
Hmm.
for sure.
So those were
So
the two that I found very, very interesting. Again, having to do with the Pacific Ocean, Hawaii. Um,
mhm.
Obviously, not everybody is going to have that, and maybe it's just because I have a link there that that's what came up for me. But
So anyways, I think this is probably a good enough place
yeah,
to wrap it up and talking about the moon
yeah,
IC line, the quintessential home line, right? But also that connection to, you know, potentially your ancestry, particularly maternal, and just that feeling of comfort, nourishment, safety, all of those things. So, anyways,
yep. Thanks, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
bye.